Welcome to this explosive breakdown of one of the most talked about moments in daytime television history. Imagine the glitz and glamour of ABC's The View, where hot topics simmer like a pot ready to boil over, and suddenly, the queen of Hollywood romance herself, Julia Roberts, finds herself in the eye of a storm. It was a crisp October morning in 2025 when Julia, fresh off promoting her latest Netflix thriller that has audiences on the edge of their seats, graced the iconic round table. The co-hosts, led by the unflappable Whoopi Goldberg, were buzzing with energy, ready to dive into everything from Julia's enduring smile that launched 1,000 magazine covers to her thoughts on modern feminism and the cutthroat world of celebrity activism. But what started as light-hearted banter quickly escalated into a verbal showdown that left jaws on the floor and social media ablaze. Julia, known for her poise in blockbusters like Pretty Woman and Erin Brockovich, entered the studio with that signature megawatt grin, waving to the cheering audience as if she were stepping onto a red carpet rather than a talk show set. Whoopi, the EGOT winner with a wit sharper than a switchblade, greeted her with a warm hug, reminiscing about their brief but memorable crossover in that heartfelt Hindi film Ezra a couple of years back, where Julia's husband Danny Motorhead wielded the camera like a magic wand. The other hosts, Sunny Hostin with her legal precision, Anna Navarro dishing political spice, Sarah Haynes bringing the relatable mom vibes, and Alyssa Farah Griffin adding that fresh conservative edge, were all smiles, eager to unpack Julia's career renaissance. Cameras rolled, applause thundered, and the segment kicked off with Whoopi tossing the first softball. "Julia, darling, you've been slaying screens since the 90s, so what's the secret to that timeless glow?" Julia laughed, her green eyes sparkling under the studio lights, launching into a charming tale of self-care routines involving green juices and quiet mornings on her Taos ranch. The audience ate it up, but beneath the surface, tensions were already brewing like thunderclouds on the horizon. As the conversation meandered to Hollywood's treatment of aging actresses, Julia's tone shifted ever so slightly, a hint of steel creeping into her velvet voice. Whoopi, ever the provocateur, leaned in with a follow-up that would ignite the fuse. "But come on, girl, you've got the power, why not use it to call out the bigwigs who still sideline women over 40? It was a question laced with Whoopi's signature blend of camaraderie and challenge, but Julia, perhaps still raw from industry battles fought in boardrooms far from the public eye, felt the bar blend differently. The room's energy crackled, the audience held its collective breath, sensing the pivot from fluff to fire. Julia paused, her fingers drumming lightly on the table, before responding with measured grace. "Whoopi, it's not that simple. Power in Hollywood is a double-edged sword. To wield it wrong, and you're the villain in your own story." The hosts nodded, but Whoopi, undeterred, pressed on, her eyes narrowing with that trademark intensity. "Nah, sis, sometimes you gotta swing hard. Look at me, I've been kicking doors down since The Color Purple. What's stopping you from naming names?" And just like that, the polite veneer shattered. Julia's smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of irritation that fans would later dissect in slow-motion clips across TikTok. The argument wasn't about to erupt yet, but the seeds were sown, watered by years of unspoken frustrations between two women who've navigated fame's treacherous waters in vastly different styles. Julia, the girl-next-door icon turned producer powerhouse, versus Whoopi, the trailblazing comic who built empires on unfiltered truth. As the cameras captured every micro-expression of the slight tilt of Sunny's head, and his knowing smirk, the stage was set for a clash that would redefine talk show drama. Little did viewers know, this wasn't just banter, it was a collision of eras, egos, and the unyielding pursuit of authenticity in a scripted world. The audience murmured, the crew held steady, and the countdown to chaos began. As the dust settled from that initial volley, the conversation on The View barreled forward like a runaway train, picking up speed with each probing question. Julia Roberts, ever the professional, steered back to safer waters, gushing about her latest project, a gripping drama where she plays a whistleblower unraveling corporate corruption, a role that mirrors her real-life advocacy for environmental causes. "It's all about finding your voice amid the noise," she said, her hands gesturing animatedly, drawing the audience into her narrative with the ease of a seasoned storyteller. Whoopi chuckled, but there was an undercurrent, a subtle edge that only the sharpest eyes caught, the way her eyebrows arched just a fraction too high, signaling she wasn't done mining for deeper truths. The other co-hosts jumped in seamlessly. Sarah Haynes shared a personal anecdote about balancing motherhood and career, earning a nod from Julia, who revealed a rare glimpse into her life with twins Hazel and Phineas, now teenagers, testing her patience with their Gen Z attitudes. Parenting in the spotlight. It's like directing a blockbuster with no script, Julia quipped, lightening the mood and eliciting laughter that rippled through the studio like a wave. But Whoopi, sensing an opening, circled back with laser focus. Speaking of scripts, Julia, you've got the clout, why not rewrite the rules for women in Hollywood? I've seen you at those galas, rubbing elbows with the suits. Call them out. It was here that the heat began to rise, the temperature in the room metaphorically spiking as Julia's posture stiffened. She leaned forward, her voice dropping an octave. Whoopi, I've been calling them out in my films, my foundations, my choices. But it's not about grandstanding, it's about quiet revolutions. The audience applauded tentatively, divided between admiration for Julia's elegance and Whoopi's raw call to arms. Sunny Hostin, ever the mediator, tried to bridge the gap. Ladies, you're both icons who've changed the game. Maybe it's about collaboration, not confrontation. But the spark had ignited, and Whoopi fanned the flames with a story from her own battles, recounting the infamous clash with studio execs during Sister Act negotiations that left her blacklisted for months. I stormed out of more rooms than I can count, Julia. That's how you get heard. Her words hung heavy, laced with the weight of decades in the trenches, and Julia, for the first time, showed a crack in her armor, a brief flash of defensiveness in her eyes. Storming out gets you headlines, Whoopi, but headlines fade. Real change? That's built in boardrooms, not on stages. The retort landed like a slap, polite but pointed, and the studio fell into a hush broken only by the faint hum of lights overhead. Ana Navarro jumped in with a zinger about political parallels, comparing the duo's debate to bipartisan gridlock. But it did little to diffuse the tension. Viewers at home, glued to their screens, began flooding comment sections. Team Julia class over chaos versus Whoopi's right, speak up or shut up. The argument was no longer hypothetical, it was personal, peeling back layers of these women's public personas to reveal the flesh and blood warriors beneath. Julia, who once fled tabloid scrutiny for a life of anonymity in New Mexico, versus Whoopi, whose life is an open book of triumphs and scars. As commercial breaks loomed, the hosts powered through, but the rift widened with every exchange, building toward an inevitable crescendo. The crew exchanged glances, the director signaled for tight shots, and the world watched as two titans teetered on the brink of breakdown. This wasn't scripted drama, it was the unvarnished clash of philosophies, where vulnerability met bravado, in a dance as old as show business itself. And as Julia sipped her water, her grip tightening on the glass, one could almost hear the storm clouds gathering louder. With the clock ticking mercilessly toward the segment's climax, the verbal sparring on The View intensified, transforming the cozy confab into a coliseum of words. Julia Roberts, her cheeks flushed under the relentless scrutiny of the lights, attempted to pivot once more, sharing a heartfelt story about mentoring young actresses on set, how she'd pulled aside a nervous newcomer during her last film, whispering encouragements that echoed her own early days dodging typecasting after Steel Magnolias. "It's about lifting others as you climb," she said softly, her voice a soothing balm that momentarily soothed the frayed edges of the discussion. The audience sighed in unison, moved by the authenticity, but Whoopi Goldberg, perched like a sentinel at the table's head, wasn't buying the deflection. "Lifting? Honey, sometimes you gotta shove 'em up the ladder yourself, or better yet, burn it down and build a new one." Her laughter boomed, but it carried a challenge, her dark eyes locking on to Julia's with an intensity that pinned her in place. The other hosts shifted uncomfortably. Alyssa Farah Griffin offered a conservative spin, noting how such burn-it-down mentalities had backfired in Washington, while Sunny Hostin countered with tales of civil rights marches where confrontation birthed progress. But the spotlight remained fixed on the two leads in this unfolding drama. Julia, drawing from a well of resilience forged in the fires of public adoration and betrayal, fired back. "Whoopi, Your path is legendary. A ghost, the view, that Oscar speech that shook the world. But not every battle needs a megaphone. Some are won in whispers. It was a eloquent parry, but Whoopi parried harder, leaning across the table with a storyteller's flair. Whispers, child, whispers got buried in the noise. I whispered once, back in the 80s, and woke up to find my career on life support. Now, I roar. The exchange crackled with electricity, each word a spark threatening to ignite the powder keg of pent-up industry grievances. Sarah Haynes, sensing the swell, interjected with humor. Okay, ladies, if this were a movie, who'd play you in the showdown scene? Me. I'd cast Meryl as the mediator. Laughter erupted, a brief oasis in the desert of discord, but it evaporated quickly as Whoopi circled back, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. Julia, level with USA. Have you ever walked away from a fight you should have stayed for? In a script, in a marriage, in this business? The question was a dagger, slicing through Julia's carefully curated narrative, evoking ghosts of her high-profile splits and the tabloid frenzy that followed her every move. Julia's jaw tightened, her fingers interlacing as if to steady herself. Every day, Whoopi, but walking away isn't defeat, it's strategy. The audience gasped, their honesty hanging like smoke after a gunshot. Social media, meanwhile, was erupting in real time. Hashtags like #Julia vs Whoopi and #View storm trending worldwide, with fans dissecting every inflection, every pause. Julia's too polished, Whoopi's too real, one tweet lamented, while another cheered. Finally, unfiltered truth on daytime TV. Back in the studio, the argument deepened, veering into the murky waters of representation, Whoopi decrying the erasure of black voices in award seasons, Julia countering with her work on diverse casts and Ticket to Paradise. It was a symphony of passion, clashing ideals harmonizing into something profoundly human. Two women, bound by shared triumphs yet divided by divergent roads to them. As the director cued the final minutes, the tension peaked, Julia's composure fraying at the edges like a well-worn script page. The storm wasn't just brewing, it was upon them, winds howling through the cracks in their camaraderie, threatening to sweep away the facade of friendship forever. And in that charged silence between retorts, the true heart of the matter pulsed. In a world that demands perfection from its stars, who gets to define strength? Nearing the precipice of no return, the atmosphere on The View thickened with the weight of unspoken histories, each co-host's input now mere echoes in the thunderous dialogue between Julia Roberts and Whoopi Goldberg. Julia, her iconic hair slightly tousled from animated gestures, delved into a vulnerable admission about the isolation of family of the lonely hotel suites after premieres, the second-guessing that plagues even Oscar winners. Fame's a gilded cage, Whoopi. You fight to get in, then fight to breathe, she confessed, her voice trembling just enough to humanize the goddess on screen. The audience leaned in, hearts swelling with empathy, but Whoopi, with her unerring instinct for the jugular, pounced gently yet firmly. Breathe. Girl, I've been choking on that cage since day one. Colorism, sexism, the whole damn system. You gotta claw your way out, not wait for the key. Her words, delivered with the rhythmic cadence of a stand-up legend, resonated like a sermon, drawing nods from Sonny and Anna, who chimed in with stories of their own glass ceilings shattered in courtrooms and cable newsrooms. Sarah Haynes attempted levity again, proposing a cage break toast with lukewarm coffee, but the humor fell flat against the mounting gravity. Julia, feeling the tide turn against her measured approach, rose to the challenge, her eyes flashing with the fire that once commanded box office billions. Claw. Whoopi, I've clawed through divorces dissected by strangers, through roles that boxed me as the pretty one while you got to be the force. But rage without reason? That's just noise. The retort sliced deep, evoking Whoopi's own battles with typecasting post The View, and for a split second, hurt flickered across her face before the mask of mirth returned. Noise? My noise built bridges, Julia, for you, for every sister coming up. What's your whisper done lately besides echo in echo chambers? The barb struck home, the studio erupting in a murmur that swelled to a roar of divided applause. Alyssa Fair-Griffin, playing devil's advocate, noted how such public spats could alienate allies, but it only fueled the fire, with Julia countering, Allies? True ones don't need spectacles, they show up in the silence. The exchange devolved into a rapid-fire volley of Whoopi touting her activism from anti-apartheid rallies to modern-day voter drives, Julia highlighting her quiet philanthropy, from funding women's shelters to ocean cleanups with her siblings. It was a clash not just of personalities but of legacies. Whoopi's bombastic Broadway to ballot box journey versus Julia's silver screen subtlety that masked a steel spine. Viewers at home captured the frenzy, clips going viral on Instagram Reels, spawning memes of Julia's raised eyebrow juxtaposed with Whoopi's emphatic fist pump. "This is better than any soap opera," one commenter gushed, while critics decried it as catty co-hosting at its worst. In the studio, the other hosts formed a human buffer, Ana Navarro quipping about needing a referee, but the momentum was unstoppable. Julia's breathing quickened, her hands now clenched under the table, as Whoopi's relentless probing unearthed a raw nerve, the unspoken pressure on white icons like Julia to amplify marginalized voices without overstepping. "Amplify or appropriate?" Whoopi pressed, her tone a blend of sisterly tough love and pointed critique. Julia recoiled visibly, the word appropriate echoing like an accusation in the hallowed hall of Hollywood equity debates. The audience held its breath, the crew frozen in anticipation, as the argument transcended personal beef into a broader indictment of celebrity complicity. This was no longer a chat show segment, it was a cultural reckoning, laid bare under Klieg lights, where every syllable carried the freight of futures unwritten. And as Julia's resolve hardened into something sharper, the storm's eye loomed, promising not just confrontation but catharsis or catastrophe. In the heart of the maelstrom, with seconds slipping away like sand through fingers, the confrontation on The View reached fever pitch, the air electric with the raw energy of unbridled authenticity. Julia Roberts, her usual serenity cracking like fine porcelain under pressure, unleashed a torrent that stunned even the most jaded producers. "Whoopi, your roar is your superpower. It's changed lives, toppled thrones. But for some of us, the whisper is the weapon that slips through the cracks, toppling from within." Her voice, steady yet laced with passion, commanded the room, drawing a swell of cheers from fans who'd long admired her understated grace in films like Notting Hill, where quiet longing spoke volumes. Whoopi, undaunted, threw her head back in a laugh that bordered on defiant. "Slipping through cracks? That's code for playing safe, Julia. I've got the scars to prove my swings lost trolls, burned bridges, but gained a voice that echoes eternally." "What's your safe play echoing?" Crickets. The gauntlet was thrown, the words a mirror held up to Julia's meticulously managed career, prompting a collective intake of breath from the co-hosts. Sunny Hostin, her legal mind whirring, interjected with a balanced plea, both voices Matera, the shout that rallies the troops, the murmur that sows the seeds. But the plea drowned in the deluge as Julia, rising like a phoenix from the ashes of restraint, leaned in with uncharacteristic ferocity. "Safe? Try surviving a decade of being America's sweetheart while your every move is magnified under a microscope. I've whispered revolutions into existence, funding therapies for child actors broken by the grind, quietly divesting from polluting studios. Your roar gets the glory, my work gets the world changed." The admission hung poignant, a revelation that peeled back the myth of effortless stardom, revealing the architect beneath the icon. The audience erupted, some standing in ovation, others whispering in awe, as Whoopi's expression softened fractionally, a respect mingling with rivalry in her gaze. Ana Navarro seized the moment for levity. "If this were Congress, you'd both be filibustering till dawn past the popcorn." Scattered giggles broke the ice, but the core conflict persisted, delving now into the visceral toll of visibility. Whoopi shared a harrowing tale of post-Oscar depression, the paradox of pinnacle achievement breeding isolation, to which Julia nodded vigorously. "Exactly, and that's why I choose shadows over spotlights sometimes. Not fear, strategy." Yet Whoopi pushed, "Shadows hide the fight, Julia. Step into the light, let MC the warrior." The push-pull dynamic mesmerized, a masterclass in rhetorical fencing where each thrust revealed more of their soul, said Julia's guarded vulnerability clashing with Whoopi's exuberant exposure. Online, the spectacle unfolded in hyperdrive. Twitter threads dissected the subtext, Reddit forums debated who won, and fan edits synced the spat to epic soundtracks from Gladiator, Julia's dropping truth bombs quietly. A respect, one user posted, countered by Whoopi's the GOAT. Julia's playing checkers to her chess. Back on stage, the director's signals grew frantic, commercials beckoning like a lifeline, but neither woman yielded ground. Sarah Haynes, tears of laughter in her eyes, quipped about needing hazard pay for emotional whiplash, while Alyssa reflected on how such raw exchanges mirrored family dinners gone wild. But beneath the banter, the argument crystallized into a profound thesis. In the theater of public life, is impact measured by decibels or depth? Julia, her chest rising and falling with the rhythm of restrained fury, felt the weight of it all: the adulation, the judgment, the relentless expectation to perform perfection. Whoopi, her presence a gravitational force, embodied the alternative, unapologetic, unfiltered, unbreakable. As the final question loomed, what's next for you both in this chaotic world? The tension coiled like a spring, ready to unleash the denouement that would etch this moment into television lore. The storm raged on, fierce and unyielding, a testament to the power of women who refused to be diminished.